This is Irene from Adrite Architecture. Welcome back. In this series, we've been looking at mistakes that you need to avoid in your construction project. In our first video, we looked at 4 mistakes, and today we're going to cover another 4 mistakes that you need to avoid if you want to be successful. Number 5, cutting corners. This is very common in Kenya. You've seen buildings collapsing all around the country. The main reason why this happens is because people like to cut corners. When you have your structural drawings in place, they usually specify certain things that need to be in place. For example, how your foundation needs to be done, and all this is so that your building is structurally sound. A lot of people like to cut corners. They want to buy less chuma, they want to use less cement in their construction, and what ends up happening is your project will actually not be sound, and anything can happen in the future. Have you ever gone to a house and seen paint cracking? Have you ever gone to a kitchen and seen leaking pipes and mold growing anywhere? Or you're in a bathroom and when you look up, there's this stain on the ceiling that tells you there is water that is seeping from the top level? All these things are actually because of cutting corners. Trying to change things once you've already moved into your house. We have seen situations where people are now having to remove their floors and put back tiling because it was done wrong in the first place. Corners were cut. You see somebody having to remove their entire roof and roof their house all over again simply because they didn't do the right thing at the first instance. This is actually extremely expensive. Sometimes it's impossible to come back from these mistakes, and you end up with a project that is not successful, that will cost you money long term in maintaining and changing and trying to rectify. To avoid all these things from the get-go, don't cut corners, do things the right way. Number 6, failing to get approvals from the relevant county government. You can find yourself in a situation where you're thinking your construction project is very remote, it's very interior, maybe you're building in shags, or maybe you're even undertaking some remodeling in your house, and you imagine you don't need approvals. That may not be true. Work with your consultants and let them guide you. They'll let you know the approvals that you require. Don't imagine that you're too far hidden and you won't need to get approvals. The people from the county, those people know how to find projects. And if you don't have approvals, they will be at your door. And when they come, because you don't have approvals, it will be a very nasty situation. They usually will carry the people who are on site and take them away, and you have to pay fines. And sometimes they can even come and demolish a construction simply because there were no approvals. Another situation that arises is people sometimes feel they are well connected. Perhaps they know the governor or they know the president, and they believe they don't need to get approvals because if anything goes wrong, if anybody comes seeking approvals, they'll just make a phone call and that problem will go away. You're very wrong. You're taking a risk actually, not just currently, but even into the future. In the last couple of years, we've seen buildings being demolished in Nairobi, not because of problems that happen now, but because of problems that those buildings had many years back. So you refuse to get approvals because you're well connected. Then in 10 years' time, the government changes and a new team comes in and they decide they're cracking down on buildings that are poorly constructed or buildings that do not have approvals. Then you find yourself in a situation where you'll be watching your building being demolished simply because you failed to get approvals at the time when you were constructing. Always make sure you have all the relevant approvals. You will need approvals both from the county government, and in some cases you will also need to get approvals from NEMA. When you get your approvals, it's also important to make sure your approval documents are always available on site, so that if anybody comes to your site and is inquiring about your approvals, your contractor can be able to remove the approved drawings and show them to anybody who may want to see them. You're also required to put up a board during construction that shows the approval number, and it shows the consultants that you're working with and the work that is going on ahead. Make sure that you follow all these regulations during your construction, because you don't want to at any point be in trouble with the county government for all these reasons. After you're done with your construction project, you will need to get an occupation certificate. Again, the issue of approvals will arise, and therefore there really isn't any way around it. Make sure that you get all the relevant approvals that you need in order to be successful in your construction project. Number 7, overbuilding. We've talked about this in another video. You can find yourself in a situation where you don't have any land constraints and you have all the money that you need for your construction. What ends up happening is you build a house that is too big, and it's too big for your needs. You find people wanting to have an office and wanting to have a gym, wanting to have a prayer room, a man cave, a swimming pool, a DSQ, a detached guest wing, so many rooms that you want. But in future, you find yourself in a situation where you're not putting your house to good use. It can also happen that your children move out of home and you build a lot of space for them, but once they've moved out, what are you going to do with that space? There's nothing wrong with building a big and palatial home if you can afford it, but it's important to ask yourself if you're going to need all those rooms and if you're going to put them to good use. If you still want to build a big home, perhaps what you need to do is consider your options in future when you don't need those rooms. You can build your house knowing that in future you want to convert it into an Airbnb or to turn it into a restaurant or a hotel. That's a very good way forward to use your space. So make sure you have those considerations in place during construction. You can also build your home in such a way that you make spaces independent of each other. The top floor can be independent of the ground floor. And in a situation where you're not using that space, you can actually let out the top floor and it serves somebody as a full unit and you occupy the ground floor. Or you can let out your guest wing or let out your DSQ. Make sure that you build your house in such a way that when you are not using all that space, there are actually options that you can use that can actually earn you money and give you an option to use your space optimally. Number 8, underbuilding. This is the right opposite of number 7. You're in a situation where maybe you have constraints in your budget, or you have constraints because you have a small parcel of land, but you're so focused, you want to build your house, you no longer want to pay rent. What ends up happening is you build a house that is too small. Your bedrooms are very tiny, they can hardly fit a bed. Your lounge is so tiny, you can hardly put in all your furniture. You hardly have circulation room. Your kitchen is so tiny, 2 people cannot even be in that kitchen at the same time. You will find yourself in a situation where you outgrow your house very quickly. And in a few short years, you don't like your house, you've outgrown it, and you're wondering what to do with it. You're actually ready to build another house and build space that will be enough for you. What will you do with that house? If you try to rent it out, you will not get clients because people don't like the amount of space that the rooms have. If you try to sell it, you face the same situation. People are not interested in that house because it doesn't have enough space. So if you find yourself in a place where you have budget constraints, the best thing that we advise you to do is build your house in phases. Let your consultants design for you a house that is big enough for your needs both now and in the future. Then what you can do is build your house slowly. You can put up the entire structure, then work on finishes slowly by slowly as money becomes more available. You'll get a better job. You'll be able to get a loan somewhere, or you'll get some windfall gain, and you will be able to have all the money you need to finish your construction. It may take you a longer period of time to do this, but you'll end up building a home that will serve your needs for the long term. So that is the second episode in this series that we are covering, where we are looking at the mistakes you do not want to make in your construction. Join us in the last episode where we'll look at another 4 mistakes that you do not want to make. Thank you.